Russia has dropped its own version of China's Great Firewall, restricting Russians' internet freedom in a way that Putin has never done before. Is this a sign of a weakening regime losing control of the narrative, or is it just Putin bringing a great idea from the East into Russia? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, but first, you guys know Strike Gum, made in the USA, veteran owned, 90 milligrams of caffeine in every piece, right? You'd be crazy not to. This is the energy drink alternative, and we have our fall sale 2-for-1. So if you've been waiting to try it, now's the time, guys. There's a reason 80% of our sales are repeat customers. It's because Strike Gum just crushes. Okay, so this is more significant than I think is letting on. Russia has been steadily cracking down on internet freedoms, right? And Russia, this is so Russia at the start of the war loved apps like Telegram and WhatsApp. The reason is because Russian official media channels, TV, newspapers, those were completely dominated by the government. And a lot of Russians no longer trusted those platforms. So they turned to influencers, particularly on Telegram. A lot of people, frankly, not unlike myself, military veterans, who said, hey, I can give you real information about the war that's happening. And the Kremlin loved it because generally military veterans are, well, pro their country. And so they were actually supportive of the war in Ukraine. But as the war is dragged on, as the deluge of increasingly uncomfortable truth is getting deeper into sort of the Russian mind, the Kremlin has had to become increasingly crack down heavy on on its social media and its influencers, right? Now, obviously, a lot of them, like, for example, Igor Girkin, a former FSB officer, he's in jail, might have even died, according to some reports. And a number of other mill bloggers, Russian mill bloggers, have been sort of either brought into the state and put on state salaries and become state mouthpieces, or have been kind of shown the door in various ways. But that's not enough for the Kremlin. The Kremlin still can't get a lock on these things. These influencers, these mill bloggers, still are pushing uncomfortable truths about the incompetence of Russian command, the failure of Russian recruitment, the low quality of Russian training. And so the Kremlin's now saying, listen, we just had to stop these pesky critics, and we're going to make our own national state-run WhatsApp and Telegram equivalent called Max. The Kremlin, of course, is now trying to achieve essentially total control over all people's conversations. And the way they're doing it is actually kind of wild, right? And because the Russian authorities are essentially saying, listen, if you want to access any kind of government agency, government app, government service, you have to have Max, right? And this is like, the Russians claim this is about stopping fraud, stopping terrorism, state security, but none of that really holds that much water. The truth is that Telegram and WhatsApp are very hard for the Russians to intercept and read those messages. But if the Russians simply owned the app themselves, well, they could look into it whenever they wanted. In fact, Max is required to be installed on all electronic devices and is the default messenger for government and banking services, right? Russia's biggest mobile operators allowed their subscribers to use Max free of charge. The messenger is 100% owned by the Russian government. And crucially, Max gives when Max is downloaded onto your phone, it gives it the access to the camera, the microphone, geolocation, contacts files, Bluetooth notifications, biometrics, and logs all activity within the app and collects information about users' age, gender, phone numbers, emails, and social media IDs. And crucially, Max, by its official user policy, says that any information on the app can be submitted directly to authorities, right? Obviously, it's transparent that Max is going to be used to spy on its users, to find anti-Russian sentiment, to find anti-war sentiment, even privately between people, right? Again, One person, a 60-year-old teacher who supports the war against Ukraine, told Kiev Independent she has not installed Max, but is not afraid of using it. She says, I don't have any anti-government thoughts. She continued, I'll have to switch to Max Messenger. Otherwise, I won't be able to access my government apps or use them fully. Of course, the sources spoke on condition of anonymity due to fear of reprisals. And again, you look at this, this is not what a strong, stable, functional regime does, right? They don't take, it's in Russia, Telegram is like the social media platform, right? And it's the equivalent of going in and being like, hey, we're banning Instagram and we want you to download Govstagram. It's just as good, except for the part where the government gets to collect all your pictures. How else are we going to train Palantir, guys? Come on. And there are so many allegations, right? I mean, the NSA collecting metadata was seen as a egregious violation of Americans' privacy. So imagine the level of violation that people are going to feel when they have to download a government messaging app that says, we're going to send this to the government, by the way. And you have no rights to any of this stuff. You are constantly subject to search and scrutiny without recourse. Like, this is not a regime that feels that it's in control, that feels that it has the power. Because remember, this isn't like the war started and the Russian government was like, we need to crack down on Telegram and WhatsApp. We are at year 3 of this war. And even now, the Russian government is like, we have to crush these people, these Telegram influencers, who, again, were in the Russian corner, by the way. This is not unlike what you're seeing around, like, Trump MAGA influencers going, hey, I want to release the Epstein files. And the MAGA world's like, hey, stop talking about it. And they're like, no, dude. Like, they're like, hey, I supported you, but I'm not your ally. I'm not your puppet. And this is what the Kremlin has discovered about their own mill bloggers. That, yeah, they might have supported your objectives, but they are not your puppets. And the ability to control these social media influencers is so hard for governments. Because unlike a state media outlet, the trust between the influencer and the audience is essential. And you know you can trust someone when they say things that are true but uncomfortable, right? It's one of the things that I always say. Listen, I criticize the president a lot, but I can say there's some things he does where I'm like, hey, yeah, good. Right? The U.S. commitment to scaling up its drone production, awesome. The U.S. willingness to build our own literal clones of the Shahed instead of having to build our own gee whiz nonsense, brilliant. Even the Gaza peace deal, I think there's some contours of something that could really work here. But I'm not a mouthpiece for any administration. I wasn't a mouthpiece for Biden. I'm not a mouthpiece for Trump. But that's why you trust me. And the Russian government does not understand this. They don't understand, or they do understand, but they can no longer tolerate the existence of mill bloggers that talk about the corruption of Russian generals, the willingness of Russian generals to send their people to die on pointless assaults, the lack of training of Russian contract soldiers. All of these things are increasingly a real meaningful threat to the Russian state. And I think that's the story here, really. If your country isn't a democracy, the public doesn't have to like what you do, but they have to tolerate it. And the fact that for some reason the Russian government seems to feel that people aren't even going to be willing to tolerate what's happening. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. Huge thank you to Paul Wheeler, Michael Clean, Jeff Davies, Francis Carius, Thomas Anderson, Gina Cuesta, as well as all of our Lieutenant tier folks. I appreciate you. Hit subscribe. See ya. Cheers.